Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Ms. Lake, for being here. Since its founding to counter Nazi propaganda during World War II, Voice of America has been a beacon of free information in repressive countries. Voice of America's parent agency, the U.S. Agency for Global Media, or USAGM, has provided access to the free press and information in over 50 languages around the world through radio, television, and internet programs. These programs, as you know, are often the only reliable news sources free from malign foreign government influence. The programs promote free thought, democratic values, and American credibility while countering authoritarian propaganda and disinformation. However, under your leadership, Ms. Lake, USAGM has been shattered. At the direction of President Trump, you cut programs, slashed funding, and tried to shutter our global news network. Now journalists are in increased danger, and reliable news is no longer accessible for millions around the world. The editor of the Russian state media network, Russia Today, celebrated your work to close Radio Free Europe, another USAGM subsidiary, saying, quote, "We couldn't shut them down, unfortunately, but America did it so itself." If our adversaries are cheering this decision, why make it in the first place? Why, after decades of successful work and experts celebrating the effectiveness of these programs, would you end them? Why would you side with our adversaries who spread disinformation by removing respected programs that counter their propaganda? Maybe it's just your track record and history of attacking the media. You know, during your first failed run for public office for governor of Arizona, you called reporters the right hand of the devil. Maybe it's because you have a history of sharing disinformation yourself. You refuse to admit, still, who won the 2020 presidential election, falsely claiming it was a rigged election. You called the January 6th insurrection here at the Capitol a staged riot. You refuse to admit you lost, both in 2022 in a gubernatorial race and in 2024 for the US Senate. The disinformation you spread during your failed campaigns were paper cuts, however, compared to the gaping wounds that will take root around the world because of your destruction of USAGM. Our adversaries are already filling the massive information hole left by USAGM. The 60 shortwave radio stations Radio Free Asia used to distribute its broadcasts have been silenced since you shut them down in March. And at the same time, China has added 80 new state media frequencies to increase the spread of their propaganda. So instead of listening to free press and trusted news from Radio Free Asia, nearly 60 million people are forced to turn to the Chinese Communist Party. The spread of CCP disinformation is alarming. In Xinjiang, where Radio Free Asia brought global attention to the Uyghur genocide, as the CCP worked overtime to hide this genocide by imprisoning Uyghur journalists, spreading propaganda, and controlling news, Radio Free Asia fought back to share the true story. The CCP tried to shut down Radio Free Asia's operations. They jammed signals and arrested and intimidated journalists and their families. It did not work. Thanks to Radio Free Asia, the world knows the truth. It was spreading in China too because they translated stories into different dialects. Or at least it was, until you took over USAGM and aided the CCP by stopping their work. That's your legacy. You told the media that you would be their worst, quote, freaking nightmare. You do seem to be a bit of a nightmare to the free press, a nightmare to the truth in general, but not our adversaries. They seem very comfortable. So I've got a simple question for you, Ms. Lake. Why are you helping authoritarian governments lie to their people?
I can see why maybe China would be upset, because they lost that VOA is slimming down, because they lost their ability to push their propaganda through the VOA, which they were doing. I don't know if you were here earlier, but the CCP...
I've been watching you, don't worry.
The CCP has a lot of control over what kind of content VOA does. You know who doesn't have control? People running the agency. The VOA could do a hit piece on you. They could lie about you. They could put the most heinous story out about you. And guess what, Representative Amo? You couldn't pick up the phone call and say, please don't do that, it's not true. They would sue you for a firewall violation. So we got to get a handle about what message we're putting out. And sadly, It hasn't been rainbows and lollipops, okay? We've been putting out a lot of anti-America propaganda, Russian
My
propaganda.
time has expired.
Okay, great.
I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. And I would remind my colleagues as well, it could be any one of them that was targeted by U.S. Agency of Global Media and by individuals inside of the headquarters on either side of the aisle. I look forward to hearing the results of that investigation. Chair now recognizes Representative McKenzie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Ms. Lake, for joining us today. I think it is imperative that we recognize the challenge that VOA faces in terms of the infiltration that we've been talking about during this hearing, of the anti-American information that has been put